right. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Hunting Beast Report. I'm your host, Scott Biskobing. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. We got a great show for you, as always. Let's go ahead and bring the man himself, the Hunting Beast, on. Let's have him join. Now, bear with us, folks. We had to kind of change things up a little bit. We were having an issue with Dan's mic tonight, so he's on his phone. So he might not be coming in as crisp and clear as usual, but we'll do our best here. Top of the morning to you. Top of the evening to you. I don't know if you've seen the aesthetics here, but I kind of wanted to be a little bit festive tonight, being that it's St. Patty's Day. Maybe you don't even realize it. Didn't you even know?
Yeah, I figured that out earlier. I went for my tacos and everybody was wearing green.
At the taco place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, see, I mean, and I don't have any, I'm not Irish at all. I'm 100% German, maybe a touch of Polish in there. So, but you know, hey, when in Rome, right? Or Ireland.
I like corned beef and cabbage a lot, but Carol can't eat it. So.
Oh, that's too bad. I made that last Friday, so a little ahead of time because I knew we'd be doing this this weekend or this week on St. Patty's Day. But we got a great guest lined up for you guys here tonight. But real quick, I just want to mention here that we're going to be at Open Season Sportsman's Expo at the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin. That's next weekend, not this coming weekend, but the weekend after, March 27th, 28th, and 29th. You can catch us at the Stealth Outdoors booth, 1729. We'll be right next door to the fellows from Huntstock.
It'll be like one.
Yeah, it's just kind of one big, huge booth. Yeah, basically. So
come over and hang out. Say hi.
Yeah. Say hi. Talk Dan's ear off. Talk to Pat and Pat.
Wear your Hunting Beast hat.
So,
really the truth.
Go ahead. What's that, Dan?
He said, really the truth.
Yes. Bring them all down or up, wherever you're coming from. It'll be a good time. It always is out there. So we're looking forward to it. And speaking of Pat, Pat Guyette is our guest here tonight. So let's go ahead and bring him on. And you'll also be able to see him at Open Season in the Kalahari. How's it going, Pat?
Nobody's coming to see me. Come on, let's get that straight.
Oh, maybe after this episode they will.
Oh, I don't think so. What's happening, boys? Happy St. Patty's Day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Set a trap this morning to try to catch a leprechaun with my son, and no leprechauns were harmed in the making of that video, but it was pretty fun. I'm not a trapper, but we set a pretty nice little trap in the dining room.
Hey, that's pretty awesome.
And
I remember doing that stuff with my kid when he was a little bit younger too.
In typical Irish St. Patty's Day fashion, I am drinking, but it's a non-alcoholic beer, just so everybody knows.
Oh, those athletics, those are good. I've actually had those before.
I'm having
tasty. All right, I'll do enough drinking for the rest of us here, for all of us.
Attaboy. Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, you're always fun to talk to.
Frisco 94 says, Scott and Dan come back to New England. And I'm assuming he means back to Huntstock. And, yeah, we'll be back out there again this August. When is that? What is the date on that? The specific date?
That one's August 7th through the 9th. So yeah, it's always the same weekend. Kind of that first Saturday, Friday, and Sunday in August.
Yeah.
Yep, we're looking forward to that. Now you guys got the lay of the land last year, and you met a bunch of people, and now it's just like a big reunion for you.
Right. It was a lot of fun. We're going to get into some more of the Huntstock talk at the end. So I want you guys to stay tuned throughout the show because Pat actually has a nice little announcement that he's going to do at the end. So you're going to want to stick around if you're interested in Huntstock Midwest coming up here in July. So, but until then, we'll kind of table that and let's start talking to Pat about how you got your start into hunting because it's somewhat traditional. I think some people are going to find it very traditional to the way they started. But I don't want to go into any more details. I'm going to kind of let you go ahead and run with that and give us a synopsis on how that all started. And then we'll get into talking about your hunting styles and stuff like that now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for me, it was, it was all deer camp. I grew up in a family that had a deer camp, built the deer camp in the 50s. My grandfather did, and he built it with his buddies. And really, they had it. They weren't so much, hardcore hunters. My grandfather hunted quite a bit, and one of his friends hunted quite a bit. But the rest of the guys that went out to camp, they just it was their happy place. They went there to get away from everything, play cards, drink, and have fun. And a lot of them didn't really make it into the woods, but they established a tradition there. And, from my earliest memories, I was going out to camp. We utilized it in the summer a lot, things like that. But, until you're a certain age, you don't get the invite out to camp to actually hunt, right? So as a kid, you see your dad leaving, for the weekend, and you see how excited he is when he's packing up the truck to go out to deer camp. And, I still remember just looking out the window every time he would leave, and you kind of get a different energy from, I got a different energy from my dad every time he was leaving. Like, he was just so excited and anticipation. So you see that as a kid, and you just you can't wait to get out there and see why that feeling is the way it is, you know what I mean? And you just can't wait to get that invite. So that was my childhood, just looking forward to the day that you get invited out to camp and you get to actually see what it's all about. And the camp's got a lot of tradition. I'd started going out there when I was 12, where I could take a bunk from somebody else who wasn't hunting a lot. And, but it's, you get the bunk, but then you're expected to really hunt, right? You gotta hunt, you gotta earn your bunk. Because there's other guys that might want to hunt that could take that bunk. So if I didn't show interest in it, who knows? Somebody else, I might have, never had the opportunity to live in that tradition. So I started hunting a lot. My dad taught me the basics. It's kind of the type of camp where there's not a lot of big bucks around. Most deer killed around there are used to be spike horns. Now you have to have a fork for it to be legal, but we keep a list at camp of every deer ever shot there. I think it's 180 deer or something since 1950. And you look at it, and 60% of the bucks are spike horns, and then it's 3-pointers and 4-pointers. It's a place where you're not going to just kill big bucks, but you hunt hard and you learn a lot doing it. And that's how I grew up into hunting, and that was my whole life, hunting, until I ended up moving down to Boston, and now I live outside of Boston. But when I moved to Boston, it's completely different down here, and I never even thought, to look at Massachusetts as a place to hunt, because in my mind, the only place that I wanted to hunt was out of deer camp, because the tradition was so deep. I just wanted to get my name up on that list as many times as I could, so it was why would I even think about hunting anywhere else? And so that was the whole first half of my hunting life, was all I knew and all I wanted to do was hunt out of deer camp. And I don't know if I mentioned, it's Vermont. It's, I grew up in Vermont, but I live in Massachusetts now. And, so I moved down here in 2010. I still hunted from 2010 up until 2019 every weekend, go back to Vermont and stay at camp and hunt that way. And then in 2019, I got married, got my wife pregnant, and we bought a house. And I started thinking, I'm there's no way that I'm going to get away with going away to camp 5 weekends in a row anymore. I should probably see if there's any opportunities to hunt closer to home. And that's kind of what got me into this next phase of my whole hunting life was, all right, now I've got to learn how to be a bow hunter, because in Massachusetts, the best opportunities at killing deer is during bow season. You've got the bow season all the way until the end of November. And then there's, a 2-week gun season. So you have all the best hunting days, and you got the pre-rut and the rut all to yourself with only other archers and no gun hunters. And then you've got town bylaws and all the stuff that comes with living in a, very liberal state, very anti-hunter state. You got to deal with, some towns you couldn't even hunt gun season if at all. It's a archery only town, and there's a lot of those like that. So I knew I had to pick up a bow. I had to learn how to shoot a bow, and I had to learn how to hunt, closer to homes and not in these big woods where I could, out of deer camp, I could just roam and roam and roam and not run into any boundaries. But in the suburbs, you're constantly battling boundaries. So since 2019, that's the game I've been playing. It's like rewriting everything that I knew about hunting. And it's been really, really fun.
Did you have somebody mentor you into that, or did you jump straight from the big woods to suburban hunting on your own?
Yeah, nobody mentored me into it in the beginning, but I started my podcast that same time because I wanted to. I knew that would be a way for me to learn and shorten my learning curve by interviewing the best suburban bow hunters and other bow hunters in the state of Massachusetts, whether it's suburban or not, just Massachusetts bow hunters. So I early on got a lot of those guys on the podcast, asked them a bunch of questions, developed relationships with them, and soaked up a lot of that stuff from them. So all of my early guests on the podcast have been mentors in one way or another, but it really took. It took like so much scouting, and the blessing for me was like COVID happened right after I bought the house. The first year I bought the house, I just went into a random spot with my bow. Didn't have any scouting because I moved in like late summer. When bow season came around, I went into a random spot. I shot a 5-pointer. It was just a yearling buck. He was a 5-pointer. And then that next, COVID hit like a few months after that, and I had a lot of free time. I couldn't work during COVID. The job that I had before was essentially, lost all my income. And it was like, all right, we're on a pause until this COVID thing happens, because I was in the event business, and all of the events got canceled. So until we were allowed to open events again, I just had this time. And I spent every free minute, and this is before my son was born too, every free minute that whole spring and summer scouting, and just boots on the ground, and still a lot of that early scouting work now that I don't get to scout as much because I'm busier, my kids are getting older, I've got 2 kids. A lot of that early scouting work is stuff that I still rely on now that still pays dividends 6 years later. So I just think it's so important to scout really hard. For, if you can dedicate 2 or 3 years of scouting really hard, then it's going to make up for, later on in your life when things change and you don't have as much time to scout, or you can't for one reason or another. A lot of that work, even if you just do it for 3 years like that, is going to pay off dividends.
So is that kind of where, like, I'm noticing a trend here, like you were in deer camp, hoping to get a spike or a fork, and then you come to Massachusetts, your first year with a 5-pointer. How did that kind of morph into the bucks we see behind you?
Yeah, I mean, so that first year scouting, I started putting cameras up all over the place, but I started like real close to my house, within a half a mile, just putting them into pieces of woods that you can't even hunt sometimes. I just wanted to see what was around, and I was amazed. Like my first camera check, I had probably 4 or 5 different bucks that were bigger than anything that I would see at my Vermont camp, like my whole life hunting there. There were 4 or 5 bucks on one camera that were bigger than that. So that gave me the motivation. It was like, holy crap, there's some really good hunting around here. So that first year, the 5-pointer, I shot a button buck too. I was just getting reps in with my bow. And then every year after that, I just would get a little bit pickier. Like I knew that there were a lot of nice caliber deer around. So that second year that I started bow hunting, 2020, I told myself I'm not shooting any yearlings. I just want a racked buck, And I ended up killing 2 2-year-olds that year, a 9-pointer and a 6-pointer, but they were both steps up, and they were both like a year older than the previous year. So just making like little incremental. There's the first one.
That's the 2019, right?
Yeah, that's my first one. The 2019 one, I was wearing blue camo. You know, everyone says don't wear blue. You know, you can still get it done, man. That's camo straight from Kyrgyzstan. My wife was born in Kyrgyzstan, and her dad brought me that as a gift, and so I wore it that year. And I don't wear blue anymore, but that's proof that you could get it done in blue. And then so the year after this, I got a little. What's that, Dan?
They kill a lot of deer in blue, dude.
Oh yeah, exactly. And then look, here's the next year. You know, that at the time was my biggest buck. I just was making incremental steps. But that year I passed probably 10 or 12 yearlings. And I just told myself I wasn't going to shoot yearlings, and that one came by. I actually shot that one in the woods behind my house. I own a little 1.5 acre piece of woods, and it butts up into about 40, 50 other acres of woodland. I can't hunt any of the other pieces, but on my 1.5 acres, with the permission from neighbors, I've got a little postage stamp where I can hunt. And I killed that one right behind my house and dragged it through the backyard, which was cool. And then I got a 9-pointer that year too, and both of them you can see like I've never been a gearhead. I've never been like somebody that's like, oh, you got to wear this kind of camo, you got to wear that. I just wearing anything that I wanted to, red and black, green and black, checkered stuff. None of that I don't think really matters. I think it's funny looking back at it now, all these different outfits I was wearing.
The green and black checkered, that's the official colors of the Northeast, I'm pretty certain.
Oh, yeah.
I got my Stager coat sitting right over there.
Oh, yeah.
So that was 2020.
Yep.
And what did you learn most during that time period? Because that was the big transition, right? Like you went from this in 2019.
Yep.
And then the shooting these 2 bucks here in 2020. What was the big takeaway there? Was it just simply passing other bucks?
I think it was a couple of things. Knowing that there's better caliber deer around than you're used to definitely gives you the confidence just to be like, hey, I don't need to kill a deer. I can afford to be choosier, And again, a lot of people watching this probably, are not going to shoot a lot of these deer. And still wouldn't, but everybody looks at things differently, and I just wanted to get better every year and show myself that and prove to myself that I was getting better. And in 2020, I had all that time. I still wasn't working by the time deer season came around, like not working as much, so I had a lot of time to sit, and so that's also why I was like, look, I've got all the time in the world, and I know there's quite a few nice bucks around, so I'm just going to pass a lot of deer. I'm not in any hurry. I could sit almost every single day of the season. So I had all that time, but also during the scouting, I was just getting better at scouting and finding more scrapes and finding out where the beddings, where the deer were bedding, and finding the travel routes. But in the suburbs, it's like, it's a little bit different. It's a lot harder to hunt down a specific buck for people that are out there trying to hunt down a specific buck, and you can't do that because there's so many boundaries. There's a lot of places that are just unhuntable. There's places that are private and posted where you could go and try to get permission, but in your head it's like, all right, I don't want to go and get all these permissions right now. So there's so many of these unhuntable places that you really can't hunt them down. You got to find a really nice small piece of land that is tucked away, that is up against some of these unhuntable places, and then that's your stomping grounds, is this little 10, it could be 10, 20 acres only, right? It could be 5 acres, but that is huntable. There's a bunch of unhuntable places around, which is going to make deer get older, allow them to get older because there's no hunting. So the bigger the quote unquote sanctuaries are around, that's what I like to focus on now. As every year I got a little bit pickier, because then the year after this was I killed 2 of these behind me. in the same year. That was my third year bow hunting, and I got even pickier. I didn't want to shoot a 2-year-old. I wanted to shoot something that was 3 and older, and I ended up shooting two 5-year-old bucks, and that's one of them there. That was early season, like the second day in the season, and it was a morning hunt. A lot of people don't hunt mornings and evenings, but I had all the time, and I wanted to soak it up. I wanted to soak up all the time that I could in these years. And I love morning hunts. I just love it. So even, I could be bumping deer out going in the morning. It was definitely aggressive, but I just like to put time. I'm a big proponent of time in the woods is your number one factor contributing to your success. If you have a lot of time, then you're going to learn over that time. You have more opportunities to learn. You got more opportunities to make mistakes. And all of that's going to lead to you being a better hunter.
Sure. This was that same buck, right?
Yeah, that's his skull. Yeah,
that's that early season buck. Yep. And then, if I'm not mistaken, I believe I have these in right. This was the second buck that season, right?
Yep. On. That's the second buck that season. He was my biggest buck until the one I got this year. He scored like 128 inches. And he weighed 184 pounds. He was 5 years old. And that deer, that was on a rainy day. It was kind of drizzling. It had rained the whole night before, but on this morning, it was just kind of drizzling the whole morning. It wasn't pouring like it was the night before. And I like to hunt on the ground in those days. So I went in on the ground and sat a spot at sunrise. And sat there for maybe the first hour and a half. I didn't see anything, and then I remembered a place that I was shed hunting. A few months prior to this, I was going through shed hunting. I found a bunch of doe beds, not far off of a road, and not far from where I was sitting this morning. The morning I killed this deer, so I just remembered, there's some doe beds over there. It's super windy. I actually can get in and go check that bedding area without bumping anything out because the way the wind was going. I might as well. It was like November 12th. It was the middle of like prime rut. The deer are starting to move all over the place. And this particular buck was always doing. He would do like this loop through a bunch of different places, a bunch of neighborhoods, a couple of bigger, 200-acre patches of woods, some CRP stuff. I had cameras in all the different habitats around this area, and he would on scrapes. I always put my cameras on scrapes, and he would go through and check a big loop, and he'd be at like clockwork on each camera in different places, like once a week. So I knew he was already sniffing around, and he was already going doe group to doe group and checking on bedding. So I just said, I'm going to get out of this spot and pop over there. It was like maybe a 10-minute walk from there to go check that doe bedding. I didn't have any cameras in there or anything. I just said, hey, let's go there and see if there's, sit there and see if we can catch a buck cruising. So I get out of the truck, and it is 200 feet off of the road where I killed this deer. But I know going in there, there's a bunch of boulders. It's like this bouldery hill, but once you get to the top of the hill, you can look down over, and that's where the deer were all bedded at the bottom of that. When I was shed hunting, so I went, took my time really, really slow because if there was a deer in there, any twig snap, they'd be gone. I went really slow up over the hill and crested it, and then went boulder to boulder, like hopping them, trying to stay quiet to get down to a place where I could shoot if something was coming through. And as I get down on that last boulder, I see movement coming through, and he was coming straight through to check on that doe bedding. There were no does there, but he just was walking, and it was like two things meeting up, just perfect timing. I got there. I didn't even get a chance to sit down. I was just going down over those boulders, and I see his movement. So he came through. I actually got this all on camera. Most of my kills have all been on camera, sometimes just with a cell phone. But in this particular case, I had my phone recording, on my bow, and just because I had a thought, maybe there will be a buck over that if I just take my time and peek over that hill. I could get some really cool footage. And he came right in like clockwork. He went behind a giant boulder. I couldn't draw for a while because I mean there was nothing between me and him. But then he went behind this big boulder, and when he did that, I drew, and I had to hop up and over a couple of different boulders to get into a shooting lane, and just made a good shot on him. And he was dead like 50 yards later. But that's ground hunting. I really love to move around, especially when it's rainy and when it's windy.
That definitely seems to be the case for a lot of you guys in the Northeast. It's kind of a reoccurring theme that we hear, that you guys are either trackers or you like to move around a lot. So it's just an interesting style for sure. I mean, not that we here in the Midwest, we do that as well, but it's just you find a lot more tree stand hunting out here for sure.
Yeah.
And Dan, what do you have for takeaways on any of this so far?
Oh, the thing that keeps going through my mind is I'm wondering what was the big shock when you went from big woods to suburban? It's a huge difference. Mm-hmm. And I'm also wondering what did you use from big woods that helped you in suburban?
Well, the thing that I used from big woods that helped the most is terrain features. Like everything that I was hunting out of my deer camp my whole life, it was all about finding the funnels and where the deer are going to be moving. They're not moving in a typical feed to bed pattern, and they probably they do to a certain extent, but there's not a lot of deer there at all, and your best odds are getting in deep to a spot where there's a couple of terrain features where you are going to find a cruising buck. So that's the only way I ever hunted out of Vermont. I never did any scouting in Vermont. I just never did. And especially when I moved down to Massachusetts, driving 4 hours up there to scout, it would be really hard. So I never did any scouting, and it was all just funnels and terrain feature hunting. Knowing where the acorns are and things like that. But the main thing is I studied so many maps, and the same thing, there's terrain features and there's funnels in the suburbs. The same, they might not be big mountainous saddles and things like that, or ridges or riverways. They could be something different. It could be the edge of a solar panel field. It could be between neighborhoods. In Massachusetts, you got to be 500 feet away from a house to be able to discharge your bow. So if you look at you just look at it on a map, there could be a neighborhood, like let's take my neighborhood for instance. Behind my house, where there's 50 acres of woods in there, but if it was open to everybody to hunt and you put a 500-foot setback off of all the houses where that neighborhood is, it shrinks that down into maybe like 5 huntable acres. Without going and getting permissions. So those places to me end up being quote unquote sanctuaries, or places where I know it's unlikely there's going to be a lot of hunter presence in there, and it could there's probably going to be some doe groups in there, and there's going to be bucks that are going through and checking on them. So funnels can be neighborhoods here. So that was definitely the main thing that I took away from the big woods is still identifying funnels, even though they look different and they are going to be different, identifying funnels and hunting funnels. And the biggest shock, or the biggest difference is this couldn't be any bigger of a difference if you think about it. In Vermont, deer hunters are beloved, right? And it's the tradition, and every household hunts. And when you get down here in the suburbs of Boston, it's the complete opposite. They didn't grow up with that tradition. You're extremely foreign to them. Your way of life is foreign. So to get into these good hunting spots, even to go scouting, you're almost kind of prowling all the time. You're like just trying to disguise yourself and sneak around. So that's not for everybody, because that is a shock. Hunting is supposed to be stress free. It's supposed to be a place you can get out and enjoy it, and just enjoy your time without thinking about, hey, is somebody over there in that house going to see me go in and call the police? Right. Even though I'm not doing anything wrong, that's still not the experience that you want as a hunter. So having to sneak around and try to hide yourself and find access. You got to be really sneaky about access points sometimes. That was the biggest shock.
Actually, got a question here for you, Pat. Heap Hunters ask, when hunting suburbia, do you key on beds like Dan does first, or because of the boundary issues, do you find the best odd spots, guessing on private bedding and sitting on property lines?
Yeah, so that's a major difference. Like I said, it's really hard to try to hunt down a deer or hunt down a specific bed. You kind of gotta you got to scout for the places that you are able to hunt first, and like I said, a 50-acre piece could be shrunk down to 5 acres in many cases. So you kind of eliminate all the places as you're doing your scouting, and I do it a lot of the elimination process, just e-scouting and using OnX. You eliminate all the unhuntable first, and then you see, all right, you have to go and check these places that are huntable, and you just start crossing them off the list. You can go in and check. It might be a 20-acre piece that is huntable. You find your access into there, and you get into that piece. There might be 4 or 5 nice scrapes there, but it could be wide open woods. There could be no nice bedding anywhere around it. But that spot can still be productive. And some of my most productive spots here are places just like that, where this is not a place that holds deer. It's not a place where big bucks are bedding, but it is a place where big bucks are moving through. So you just kind of you got to scout that small spot. Once you do your inventory, you got cameras up, you see there's 3 or 4 bucks using it, and you want to spend more time in that place. Like if I put a camera in that spot and I had hardly any deer or no bucks going through there or 1 small buck, then I'm eliminating that year, and I'm not going to focus a lot of time on it. But if there's 4 or 5 in there, now you've got a fun little puzzle to try to figure out. When are they moving through? How are they moving through that one piece? And it's not, you can't get down and, go try to backtrack and find where that buck is bedding, because that's not going to matter. He's bedding on the place that you can't hunt. You just have to be in that spot when he moves through it, and it's kind of a fun game doing that.
Sure. Dan, have you had much experience hunting anything remotely suburban or on the fringes of town, kind of a thing?
Yeah, I've done some suburban hunting for sure. But I probably got into the biggest bucks in my life in suburban areas. But I really didn't like the stuff that Pat was talking about.
Yep.
I didn't like I got arrested once and thrown in jail for hunting totally legal.
Yeah.
And to cover their asses so they wouldn't get a lawsuit when they figured out it was legal, they charged me with disorderly conduct for wearing army clothes. Carrying a weapon. It was really weird. It was really weird. But I had all kinds of issues with that. I mean, I would constantly having some guy named Sarah with purple hair screaming at you. You'd have, just confrontations constantly. Like you said, it was people that don't understand hunting, don't understand hunters, don't understand our way of life, and think you're just cruel people who found some loophole in the law to get giddy and kill animals. They don't understand. So I didn't like the fact that in order to do it and do it right, I had to be sneaky. I'd be hiding my vehicle, sneaking in and stuff. To me, it takes the joy out of hunting, and it's not as much about the big bucks as it is the pursuit and stuff, and it just took too much away from me. I don't knock it for anybody. It's just, for me, I just can't stand the constant confrontations and issues. Yeah. So I would rather hunt land where everybody else does.
Yep. Yeah, and I would rather hunt land, bigger pieces of land too, right? But sometimes you just got to hunt what you have available to you. And to be present in my kid's life and stuff like that, I wanted to at least be able to hunt close to home where I could get out quick, I could be back quick in time for bedtime. I got to get my kid on the bus. And so it kind of just like fell into my lap. Like this was my option. But don't get me wrong, like I scout all the way an hour and a half in every direction from my house, and I can get into a lot of big pieces, and I do spend quite a bit of time in big patches of woods. Dan, some of the stuff like you scouted when you were out here, with Pat Burns, and even some of the stuff that we hunted at the Onyx camp that we did. Like I do spend a lot of time hunting in those places, and I do prefer it. It is more peaceful. You don't have to sneak around. But around, I also have been able to like just let that part go where I don't get worried about or scared or apprehensive about any of the possible bad interactions you could have. And I'm lucky; I haven't had a bad interaction. In all of this, I've never had somebody screaming at me or somebody telling me I'm not supposed to be where I'm hunting or anything like that. Maybe that's just because I'm extra sneaky, but I haven't had that type of interaction yet.
With your blue camo, right? Yeah.
Not in the blue camo days.
Well, I'll tell you what, you blew it now, though. I mean, you completely jinxed yourself. I mean, it's like a no-hitter. You don't talk about it.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's coming this year. Yep.
I'll say that when I hunted suburban land, and even some of the stuff I still hunt, that's semi like that, I do not wear any camo. I just wear stuff that blends in, flannels and things, and
yeah,
then you don't get noticed as much.
You're just a hiker or somebody looking for mushrooms or something. Or
so I've got something I can touch on that'll kind of talk about the level of sneakiness sometimes that is required. My favorite spot, my go-to spot, it produces every single year. There's tons of deer in there. And really I found it and started focusing on it because there was a huge doe group in there. And in the suburbs, I think if you can find a good doe group in those overlooked spots, those 20, 30 acre spots that are next to quote unquote sanctuaries that allow the mature bucks to get older, if you can find a spot like that where does are bedding on it, and especially if it's a big doe group, then that's a money spot in the suburbs, because at that point you don't have to go hunt the deer down and find their bedding. They're bedding in deep into that unhuntable stuff. But those doe groups, if they're bedding nearby, it turns that spot into an amazing rut spot. So I found that out the first year in this spot, and I call this spot the Vortex because, I'm surrounded essentially by quote unquote sanctuaries. And there's, the piece that I found in the middle of it, there was no hunter sign in there. There were some really old hunter signs, some old stands from the 80s and the 90s maybe in there that are still up in trees, so some real old hunter sign, but there was no fresh hunter sign when I first went in there. So I was like, ooh, this has got all the things that I really want. I've got the surrounding sanctuary, so I know there's going to be mature bucks in there. I've got no fresh hunter sign, and it's really difficult access. Like most people would feel uncomfortable accessing it the way that I do. And this past year, there's a few hunters that went in there, so the whole thing is changing a little bit. But for like 3 or 4 years, there was nobody in there but me. And like I said, it's bordered by sanctuary on like 3 sides, essentially. So you can't get in on any of those sides. On the other side is a highway. And, it's not an interstate, but it's a highway. And, you can't park. There's a couple of pull-offs off of that highway, and you can't park in some of them. There's no parking signs. And then there's one pull-off that doesn't have a no parking sign on it, but it's got a pull-off. So I started parking there, and then I have to run across a highway to get into this piece. And I got to the point where after scouting that place, putting cameras up, 5 or 6, sometimes 7 mature bucks that I would shoot. I just want to shoot anything that's, 4 years or older now. I don't care if it's a monster buck, just something that's 4 years or older. That's what I'm after. And there were 7 shooters using that piece one year. So I started really honing in on it, and I would pack my truck. And I still do this. I pack it in a way that where I pull off on the side. All my gear is, packed to the right side of my truck. So it's a highway. I go as fast as I can on the highway so that I can create separation from any other vehicle that might, headlights I can see behind me. I want to create separation so that I can pull off into this pull off, and park and close my door and shut my lights off before they come around the corner with their headlights. So that's the first thing I'm thinking. I got to go as fast as I can once I get on the highway, create separation so I can pull off and then sit there. So I'll turn the truck off, lights are off, and then by that point, usually there's headlights coming both ways, and I wait for all the headlights to clear, and then I get out on the highway side, I run around to the other side, and I kneel down next to my truck, and I wait. Again, by that point, just getting out and running around. Usually there's more headlights coming, so I wait for them to clear again. I'll open the back door. All my stuff's packed to the right, my bow, my pack, and all that stuff. I'll grab it out, put my pack on my back, close the door, kneel down, wait for it to be clear, and then run across the highway. Just because I don't want anybody to see, me going in there, and just on the odd chance that one of them is a hunter, because they're gonna think of that, mark it down, maybe e-scout it, or go put boots on the ground and see what's going on in there. So it's really like the avoidance of other hunters, more so that I don't want other hunters to see me more than I don't want landowners to see me. I don't really care if a landowner sees me because I know that I'm hunting legally and I can explain that to them, but I just don't want other hunters to see where I'm going.
You want to go a little bit further into that, explain to some of the folks here in the Midwest how that works out there as far as private land, posted, not posted, what your rights are and stuff, because it's quite different out here and probably quite a few states, but if you want to touch on that.
Yeah. In Massachusetts, you can hunt private land that is not posted. If it's posted no trespassing or it's posted signs, you can't go on it, obviously, but I don't know, probably 60% of the properties in the state are not posted. So you're free to go on and hunt on that property. It's a thing in Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and Massachusetts. Those four states, you can go on unposted property without having to get permission. So that's a great tool in the suburbs, but you also have to be careful about towns. Every town has a specific, set of bylaws, and some towns, like the town that I live in, even though the state law is you don't need written permission to hunt on somebody else's property, a town bylaw can overrule that. And the town that I live in, you need written permission to hunt on anybody's private property. So there are, I don't know, probably 20 or 30 towns like that in Massachusetts where there's a town bylaw. So you just have to know those towns. It's probably not that hard to go and get permission from some of those landowners anyway, if you're into that sort of a thing. But for me, I haven't had to seek that out yet. Most of the places I'm hunting are open to anybody to hunt. Anybody can get on there. They just don't know about them.
Yeah, that's really interesting how the township thing comes into play and how much that can change things. Dan, you experienced that when you were out there in December.
Yeah, he did.
Do you want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, I read the rule book, and the rule book said I could go where I wanted. And the rule book doesn't have the town laws in it. Where I'm used to, the rule books here are pretty much golden, in Wisconsin. So I went hunting and ran into a landowner who told me I was on his property illegally, and I explained the law to him, and he explained to me that there's a town bylaw. He was actually pretty cool about it.
Yeah.
He just said, "Hey, we're big hunters," and I was like, when you got that as a state law, you think your land would be posted. He goes, "Well, I don't have to." I go, "I get that, but if the state law is you can hunt where you want, I'd probably post it just so that you don't run into an issue like a guy like me to come up down. But it's on my end. I have to know the rules. And in that case, it would have been pretty impossible for me to know the rules unless every town I hunted in, I called the town and asked."
Yeah, because that town too, we looked up online after, and we couldn't find anything online in any published place or on the government websites or anything about that town where that bylaw was there, but we did talk to many landowners after that experience there, and they all said the same thing. So it must be in their bylaws, and they just didn't update it online. So it would be good practice to call in Massachusetts the town if before you go and start scouting and start planning to hunt it. Just call the town, because you never know. That was in Western Massachusetts too, where Western Massachusetts is pretty rural. It reminds me a lot of Vermont, and I wouldn't have thought that far west there would be any towns that have that bylaw, but I guess there is.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Do you ever have any issues where you shot a deer and it ended up someplace funny when you're hunting around all those buildings and houses and stuff?
No, not yet. I did have a buddy of mine that I brought into to one of my suburban spots that produce. I like to bring new hunters, people that kind of look at me as a mentor. I like to bring them into my best spots, if as long as they're my friend and I trust them, and just to get them some experience, because I've done all the scouting. I know they're going to see deer. I know they're going to get opportunities, and so I brought a friend of mine, Justin, into one of those spots, and he shot spike horn. He didn't make a great shot on it, and it had its gut. I heard what I thought was its death groan. He was just this guttural death groan, and I was like, oh, he's probably got that deer. But I was talking with him on the phone. I'm like, just wait. He wanted to get down and like go track it right away. I'm like, no, just if you weren't sure about your shot, just wait a little bit. I'll come down and help you look. So we waited like 2.5 hours, and I got down and met up with him. And we ended up kicking that deer up, and his guts were hanging out, of the exit wound, and basically dragging on the ground. And that deer ended up running off into the highway, that same highway, that I access and have to park. He ran down into the middle of the highway, and all these cars were slowing down, and all of a sudden I was like, oh man, this is this is not good. Like now a lot of people are gonna know that you can hunt up in here. And he crossed the highway and bedded down in this really small, thin patch of woods between the highway and some water. And I said, all right, we saw where he bedded down. Let's just get to the truck, get out of here, and we're gonna have to give him a lot of time now. He's not gonna get up from there and go anywhere else. Let's just get out of there. And that was on Halloween, so we both had to go and like take our kids trick or treating, and then we both got in trouble. After trick or treating, being like, hey, we got to go recover this deer. We both got in a little bit of trouble with our wives, but we went back and recovered the deer. But when we got into the truck after the deer crossed the highway, we got in a truck, and a police officer came by and rolled up slowly next to us. And I rolled the window down. He's like, hey, did you guys shoot a deer up in there? We're like, yeah, we did. He's like, oh, we just got a bunch of calls. I was like, we know. We saw him. He was in, he just crossed. He's right over there. He's going to die. We're going to let him die. We're going to come back and get him tonight. So that's the only one like that I've had so far since I've been hunting the suburbs.
I had one where I was scouting in a suburban area, and not hunting, but scouting in spring.
Yeah. And
I jumped up a group of deer, and they ran out into the highway, and you heard all this skidding and crash.
Yeah. I heard of that happening, and until then, I just hadn't seen it in practice. But bloody deer dodging cars on the highway. Wow. Highways are good edges in the suburbs too. There's a different kind of highway you don't really think about. Up in Vermont, I would probably be avoiding hunting anywhere near a highway. But in the suburbs, if a highway is going through, it creates some nice edges and usually some pretty good habitat, because usually there's swamp and wetlands on the sides of the highway where you can't build. So those turn into nice little pockets of deer that can hold some big bucks too.
Yeah. Wounded deer wise, I think you probably need to take into consideration making sure you only take really good shots, because you don't want to be tracking 1.5 mile.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, you got to be picky with your shots. I've been lucky that I have not not recovered a deer with my bow yet that I've hit. Every time that I've taken a shot, it's been a kill shot, and I've been able to recover it. I know that, again, knock on wood, that's definitely going to happen. It's going to it happens to everybody. But I do try to be really picky with my shots because I don't want them going somewhere where I wouldn't be able to recover them.
Yeah, there you go again, talking about it.
Yeah, it's all right. I like challenges.
This whole episode here for you because you're just knocking on all the wood.
I like failure, man. Failure is great. Failure breeds, it makes you more successful, and you learn something
100%.
from it. Yeah. So I know that's coming, and I kind of can't wait for it.
Yeah, let us know how you feel in that moment, though. All right, I wanted to kind of get into some of these other bucks here that you've kind of progressed there. We got into 2021, and let's just jump to 2022 here because you kind of sent me a bunch of different photos and kind of showing the progression of different things, the highs and lows and the ups and downs here.
Yep.
This was in 2022, right?
Yep. Yeah, so that was coming right off of that year where I got two nice bucks, 126 and 128 inch. They were both 5 years old, and so coming off a really good year, and I was really proud of that season. And went into 2022, hoping to have a season like that again. And this just goes to show, like, he's a nice buck, but he was not. He might have been 3. He was either 2 or 3. He wasn't that 4+ age class, and he had a lot of potential. He only scores like 115 inches, but that's a buck that I shot because of the scenario that I was in. Being a deer camp hunter and the camaraderie and community aspect of hunting. My dad and my uncle, who were both mentors of mine, at deer camp and hunting, and guys that I look up to when it comes to hunting, and they got me into it. And my uncle's a really good hunter for deer camp up there. He's got deer camp honed in. He scouts it like crazy, and his name appears on that list, more than anybody else. In the history of the camp. So he came down to hunt for the first time in Massachusetts. I was like, hey, I've been scouting a lot down here. I got a bunch of great places. I would love for you guys to come and experience it. You got a really good opportunity at nice bucks. So my uncle came down for 2 days, for a weekend. I think it was a Friday, Saturday hunt. You can't hunt Sundays in Massachusetts. Another one of those weird laws here. So it was a Friday, Saturday, and he came down with my dad, and we were all hunting my favorite spot, the Vortex that I just been telling you guys about. And that was the first year that I had went into the Vortex. So it was like they came down the first week of the season, and it was my first time being able to hunt in there. And we had a lot of shooters going through and utilizing that patch of wood. So all 3 of us were in there. It's kind of a small patch. We were probably 300, 400 yards away from each other, making our way through the property and covering 3 different travel routes. And that deer gave me a shot opportunity. And, I probably would have passed him if my dad wasn't there and my uncle wasn't there, but it just felt right, man. He came in, he gave me a beautiful shot. He has a really amazing coat on him. Like, he's just a beautiful deer, and it felt right. And so I did that to have that experience, to be able to share that with my dad and my uncle. But I love that deer. It was a step down when I was trying to only shoot mature deer, but because of the scenario and the situation, if it feels right, you got to do it. So that was that deer, and then I had the whole rest of the season, so I was being really picky the rest of the season, and I ended up shooting a giant 6-pointer. He didn't have brow tines, or he would have been a real big 8. And I shot a real nice 6. I don't know how old that deer was, but he was super wide. And when I shot him, his this was in December. I shot him and his antlers fell off right in front of me. So there's the picture. So I had to go recover him and then recover his antlers, which was pretty unique. And I actually passed that buck. The second week of the season, that buck walked under my stand at 8 yards, and I passed him with the bow because there were a couple of real nice other bigger bucks in that patch of woods. So early in the season, I passed him, and then it got, all the way into muzzleloader season, and I went out to track. This is a patch of woods that's about 1,200 acres. That's not too far from my house. And so, that's still not tracking woods to a lot of guys who are diehard trackers. But when you're in the suburbs and you get some snow, I wanted to go out and try to track. And this 1,200 acre piece was the best shot that I had. So I went out and I picked up his track about 11 a.m. and I started following it. And the sun, it was warming up. And the snow was melting, and on the southern, parts of the hills where the sun was hitting, there was no snow. So I followed this track for a while until it got to one of those sun-soaked hills, and where I lost it. But I knew that property, and I know, if I just crest to the top of that hill, there's bedding on the other side of it, and there's a farmer's field over here, and I know they utilize it. So, hey, what the heck? I tracked this deer that far. I might as well creep up this hill, even though I lost his track. I got to the top of the hill, and I saw, about 75 yards out in front of me, I just saw that rack. He was bedded down, and I had a muzzleloader. There was a lot of thick brush between him and I, so I wasn't going to try to force a muzzleloader round in through all of this thick brush. I just told myself, well, he's right there. I'm just going to wait him out. The wind was in my face. So I just knelt down behind a tree, and I think it was like 2.5 hours I was waiting there, watching him with my binos, picking up the scope every once in a while. He'd groom himself. He'd put his head down on the ground all the way for a little bit, and then finally 2.5 hours later, he stepped up, and I shot him. And his antlers fell off, but that was a really cool experience and a really fun hunt. Actually, I don't count it as me getting a deer tracking because I think I lost him there a little bit at the end, and I'd like to have that big woods Maine or Vermont or New Hampshire tracking experience. But I did kind of track that buck, and it was a really cool hunt.
Sure, that's awesome. What were you going to say? Something, Dan?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
I got a couple questions here real quick. This is for you, Pat. What is your threshold for hunting pressure around your spots? Like Dan walks past most spots where there's pressure, but in small suburban, away from the private bedding, it may matter less.
Yeah, every spot's going to be different. So that spot that I was just talking about, 1,200 acres, it's still technically suburban because there's the 1,200 acres is surrounded by houses on every road, right? But the middle is pretty much untouched. In a place like that, the pressure doesn't really bother me as much. And there's in general, there's not a lot of hunters in Massachusetts anyway, but a patch of woods that big probably has 2 or 3 good bow hunters that are spending a lot of time in it. But that's 1,200 acres for 2 or 3 like really good bow hunters that I'd be worried about. You know what I mean? Some people that might go in there every once in a while, you might see stands, but I don't let the stands part bother me in a bigger patch of woods. There's a lot of stands out there that look new, that are 10 years old and hasn't been hunted since somebody hung it. And that happens, that happens a lot. So I don't let the stands really bother me too much. But in the smaller pieces where you really don't have a lot of room to move in one direction or the other without running into a boundary, if I see one, that vortex spot, if I went in there and there was one good stand and some cameras in there, that spot would be small enough for me to just say, all right, I'm going to write this one off right now and go find a spot. So if it's like a 10 to 30 acre patch of woods or something like that, if there's sign that a hunter is in there, and it, whether they have cameras up or a brand new stand or something, I'll avoid it and go try to find something else. But in the bigger pieces, it doesn't really bother me.
You know what I was thinking while you were talking? One of the things I do is I use a sled a lot to take deer in and out.
Yep.
And one of the reasons that I don't talk about much, it's usually just for the convenience of taking a deer out. But one of the reasons is I don't leave a drag trail. I don't leave blood all over the place. And when you get to a vehicle, one guy on each side, you pick it up real fast and throw it in the vehicle, where an actual floppy deer is hard. I bet you that would really help in a situation like you're talking about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I've all of my deer, except for the one that dragged through my backyard in Massachusetts, have come out on a sled. But that whole sneaky part, that's also the part like that it's almost worse than sneaking in and out of your spots is trying to get your deer out without being discovered. Even if it's in a sled, that process of like you still have to get it out to a road and get it in the back of your truck. And you could do that in 15 or 20 seconds maybe, but there's a lot of exposure getting a deer into your truck. And especially if you're dragging a nice one out, you just don't want another hunter to be seeing you doing it.
Another quick question for you, and this comes from Bill M 4826. Hunters in Massachusetts. So we're asking you, Pat, what's more important, antler size or weight? Because I know, like up in the Northeast, it's pretty common that weight bears a lot, right?
Yeah.
No pun intended, but what about in Massachusetts, maybe specifically in your area?
I would say, it just depends on the hunter. There's a lot of hunters that still just would rather have weight. There's some hunters that just would rather have a mature deer, and they don't care if it weighs 170 pounds and scores 115. If he was 5 years old, then that's a success in their mind. And then you definitely got hunters that are looking at racks. But I would say in general, it's probably more of a rack state than a weight state. Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine are weight for sure. Massachusetts, I just think because it's more of a bow hunting state, there's less trackers, less opportunity for tracking. The weight thing really comes from the trackers. It's the tracking community is where the weight matters the most. But I'm not a tracker. I've tracked a couple of times. I'm a bow hunter, and I like to hunt every different way that I possibly can. And I still, but I would love to get a 200 pounder, and I shot one this year. But that benchmark, that 200-pound level that you hear a lot about the Northeast, every hunter is going to be proud to get that, even if they're just a rack hunter or if they're a mature buck hunter. If you get that, it's like the sweetener on the cake.
Sure.
I've noticed that, not to ruffle any feathers, but the places that are more locked into the 200-pound club per se are also the places that genetically don't get very big bucks, antler wise. Like you get a 5-year-old in Maine, and there's a good chance it don't make Pope and Young. It's 100, 110 inches, 8 or 6-pointer. Quite often, but they're a giant buck. So I would think in that situation, weight would be far more appreciated.
Yeah, it just ends up being a better measurement tool, than the racks. But really the weight thing started because back then, tracking's been around forever, right? It's one of the oldest ways to hunt. Is the oldest way to hunt. And it was back when everybody was poor and everybody hunted just for the meat. You didn't have trophy hunting wasn't really a thing. It was, no, I got to get the most meat for my family, and I have one buck tag in most of these states, especially back 100 years ago. One buck tag. You got to try to find the biggest buck to bring the most meat back to your table. So it started that way. And now, hardly anybody hunts just because they need the meat. We all love the meat, but it's a different time. It's not like most families. You don't need it to survive, but back then you did.
Yeah.
All right. Before we move on to some of these other bucks here that you've kind of going in chronological order here a little bit. This isn't the top 5 here, but we're kind of just showing the progression of what you've been going through here over the last 5-6 years here. I guess 7 years now, coming up on 7 years, right?
Yep.
But before we continue on here, this was a really nice comment here from Solo Dom 01, says, listening to Dan, Scott, and Pat talk hunting tactics really brightened a very stressful day. Thanks for everything, guys, really. You know what? That's what we're here for. That's why we do this every week, right, Dan? Brighten somebody's day.
Yeah, man. And I hope whatever you're going through, this is a little
Right.
bit of this is kind of like the deer camp. And again, it just goes to community, like going to deer camp. Everybody that goes there, you've got so many stressful things happening in your day, or you got taxes due, or you might have some problems with a family member or something. You got like you go to camp and all of that goes away. And I think that is something that, especially you guys being a live show, I love that you do it live. People really feel like they're a part of the conversation. And I think you probably don't think about that part of it very much, but you're probably brightening a lot of people's day doing this every week.
I think doing it earlier in the week like this on a Tuesday night when it's still kind of the doom and gloom of the week, right?
Yeah.
Once you get beyond Wednesday, you're like, okay, all right. But the Mondays and Tuesdays are tough, and you need something to look forward to. So if we can brighten your day just a little bit, hey, that makes us happy too. So, all right, let's move on here. So we talked about the 20. Let's see, where do we leave off here? You have to forgive me here. I don't want to jump ahead. Let's move on to this buck here. This was 2023 as well, right?
Yes. So the last two we just did were 2022. This was 2023.
Okay.
This is kind of a cool story because
Cool buck.
I'm very picky now. Thanks, dude. Yeah, that one when he showed up, in my head, I said, that's the biggest buck I've ever shot right there. He's just
big
tall.
beams.
He's tall. He's one of those tall. He just looked a lot bigger. He ended up having kind of short tines, but he was an amazing deer. But now we're in, the part of my hunting life where I'm getting really picky with the bow, and I pass lots of deer. This year I had passed over 50 bucks with my bow. That came into range, and some pretty nice ones, that are low 120s, and but I get really picky with the bow, and I hunt a lot, and you get into when gun season comes around, like I get this renewed energy. It's like, okay, I just went through an entire bow season. I was very picky. I had a lot of action, but I never even lifted my bow. So when it turns to gun season, it kind of feels like a cheat code. You're like, damn, now I just extended my range by a heck of a lot more, and I can be a little bit more, aggressive, because when I take my gun out, I got to go find bigger pieces of woods, and that opens up, the ground hunting game and stuff, and being able to stretch my legs and do a lot of that stuff that I grew up doing. So the day before this was the opening day of gun season. So it's that first day that I get to take my gun out now, retire the bow for the season, and go. And I'm usually really excited for the opening day of gun season in Massachusetts as well. So I get out that opening morning, I sit for the first hour and a half, and then I just start still hunting. It was a great day for moving through the woods and moving quietly. And I did a big loop, and I was in that 1,200 acre piece that I was just talking about, that I killed that 6-pointer in. So I've got all this room to move, and I'm putting on a really good still hunt, and I feel like I'm in the zone, and I'm starting to creep up this hill, and I see a big body of a deer, close to the peak of this ridge that I'm looking at. There's a big ridge, and I could see a body, and I freeze where I'm at, and I peek around, I lift up my gun, and it's a doe, but the doe is locked. She saw me or heard me or something, because she was locked onto me. So I was in mid stride, left foot forward, gun down to my right foot back. And I had to freeze in that because she was locked onto me, and I didn't want to make a move. So I stayed in that awkward footing position, and lifted my gun and kept an eye on her here and there, really slowly, everything I was doing. And as I was observing her, I saw that she was paying attention behind her every once in a while. She'd look back. So I was thinking, all right, well, there's got to be a buck here. It's November. It was like November 28th or 29th or something like that, but still in a nice rut phase. And behind her, on the crest of the ridge, there was a buck just over the other crest, but all I could see were the tips of his tines. I could see tines moving up there. So I was still in this standoff with this doe. That buck was waiting up there on the other side, secure, not, waiting to see what's going to happen with the doe. And I'm going through all this stuff in my head. Well, if that doe, at some point, she's probably going to blow at me and take off. And that buck is going to follow her wherever she's going, so just pay attention. So eventually, after 7 minutes, she blew at me. And she took off a little bit, and when that happened, this buck crested the ridge like this. He came up like this, and his tines kind of went out like this, which I made him look bigger. He was a big buck. He was nice, but he looked like almost like a red stag or something. He crested the hill. It's not this buck. This buck I got the next day.
Not this one. Okay.
Yeah, I ended up shooting this one the next day. So this buck crests the ridge, and all I can see is his throat patch and up, and the doe blew again, and when she blew, he whipped his head towards her and showed me the side of his neck, and I shot him right here in the middle of his neck. And he dropped. He just dropped, and I was like, "Ooh, that was awesome!" And I ended up not recovering that deer. He was just temporarily stunned. The bullet went right through his neck, like right in the middle, and he was stunned for like 2 or 3 minutes, and then he started kicking around. And I hadn't even reloaded because I thought he was dropped. So he started kicking around, and now I'm struggling with my muzzleloader to get it all reloaded, and I ended up not getting him. He got up and took off. I went and investigated the scene. There's all kinds of blood everywhere. I thought for sure I was still going to walk up on him dead somewhere. Spent the whole day tracking him. Never ended up recovering him. So I was super, distraught about that. But the next day, I went in to a whole new patch of woods, and it was a special lottery hunt in Massachusetts to hunt a place. Like 200 people get drawn for it. So there's all kinds of hunters when you're going into this place, moving deer around these woods. But typically, that place doesn't get hunted every 2 or 3 years. So there's some nice animals in there, and there's tons of hunters. So I went into that hunt. Just kind of trying to come up with a whole new game plan. Now I'm looking at Onyx, and I'm looking at terrain features. I know where all the hunters are driving in and where they're going to be parking and where all the service roads in this place go through. And you're really just trying to this is where the funnel thing is the most important, because you have all these hunters that are going to be moving deer back and forth, left and right in there, where if you can just fight the urge to move and just sit, and even if you see hunters walking by you can sit and hold it out. That was my strategy going into this one, and I ended up finding a nice spot in Onyx and going in there in the morning, in the dark, and this buck didn't end up coming out until 2 o'clock, and I never saw another hunter go by me when I was in that stand, which I thought was I did not expect that. I expected to see tons of hunters, but it was over a cliff. I had to get down this steep cliff, and I don't mind. Going through places that a lot of people don't want to go through. So I got down there in this little hidden plateau, and there were a couple nice funnels going through. And this buck just ended up being naturally chasing a doe. He didn't even get pushed. I saw a couple of does bust out of the jack pines. And then I just saw flashes of his rack going through the jack pines, and then he busted out the wall of it, and I shot him with my muzzleloader. But this was the day after I just messed up on that other one, and didn't recover him because I didn't reload right away. So I shot this one, and then I just focused on reloading as fast as I could, and never keep taking my eye off of him as I'm reloading. And he ended up lying down into a bed. He was pretty still there for 15 seconds, and then it looked like he was trying to get back up. So I shot him again. Just keeping in mind what happened the day before. I shot him again, then went down and recovered him. And the really cool thing, which is kind of funny looking back on it now, is I was filming that one too, and I didn't even know until a week later when I was reviewing footage after I shot him, and then I spun around in my climber and kept an eye on him and was reloading. My camera was still, capturing, where I had shot him, that whole area. there was another buck, a bigger buck than him, nicer than him, big, nice 10-pointer with tall tines everywhere that walked through as my back was to him and I was reloading, and you can see him in the background of the footage. I thought that was kind of funny. I mean, I had two buck tags. I had two buck tags, and I could have taken both of them if I would have seen them, but I never saw him in the moment because I was so focused on, learning from that mistake and not taking my eye off of him and just getting that reload done as fast as possible.
Sure. Yeah, that's makes sense.
Yeah. So he was he was a beauty. I still don't know what he scored. I never got him scored, but that's him right there.
I was gonna ask that. That looks like him right there. Those big swooping beams there on him. Big basketball hoop.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite bucks. His rack is just so cool.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna move on to a muzzle loader here. I'm sorry. Excuse me. I've got this one labeled wrong here. This was from last year, right?
Yeah, this is from this past season. Yep. Yeah, so after that one, the one we just talked about, 2024, I focused all my time in 2024. I did something that I don't normally do, which was focus my time on one particular buck because he was a buck of a lifetime type deer. He was kind of a local legend in this area. People had been hunting him for 8 years. He ended up being 11 years old because he got killed. He was an 11-year-old buck that still scored in like the high 170s, and he was just a freak. So I came across that buck and decided I was going to put all my eggs into him and try to figure him out. Pretty suburban. There was a school nearby. I ended up, I don't want to go through his story too much because it'll take a long time. But I ended up finding out, where he was living, his primary bedding. He was bedding behind a school, not too far off of a baseball field that kids were playing baseball on all the time. Obviously, you can't hunt the school property. I had permission from this really nice neighborhood that abutted it to get back into the public that abutted the school that you could hunt. The problem was he went through that small piece of public that you could hunt at night and only at night. So I ended up finding out he just stayed real close to houses and real close to that baseball field and the school, and he was smart. That's how he got to be 11 years old. So he ended up getting killed, and later I found out that he was poached. So that year, 2024, I didn't have any other fresh scouting going on. I had put all my resources, all my time into that other buck. So I just kind of, utilized previous years of scouting and popped into new places here and there and went and tried to find another really big one. But I didn't end up getting one with a bow in 2024 that year. I did shoot a 2-year-old with my gun on opening day of gun season that year. Got some meat in the freezer. And then that brings us into this year. And this is my biggest buck I've ever killed. I don't know what he scores yet. I haven't gotten him scored, but he's right around 150, and he weighed 218 pounds. And he came at a really good time. I hunted really hard this year, early season. I hired a cameraman for the first time, so I was kind of getting adjusted to that and having somebody with me all the time. Sure. And it was really fun, and we worked well together, and he was really quiet and he was sneaky. He was everything you could ask for from a cameraman. But we had the first 2 weeks that he hunted with me, because he started mid-October. We hunted a lot of time, and we didn't see a lot of deer, and we never had a shooter walk into range at all. So we'd gone through 2 weeks of, hard hunting, early mornings, real late. We were hunting, pulling long sits. We were bouncing around in different spots. I was really working this guy to see if he could, keep up with me and the amount of hours that I hunt. So anyways, we never got any opportunities to get a kill shot opportunity and allow him to be able to make a mistake here and there or any reps with that. And this was the first buck that came into range, not even no spike horns, no forks, nothing had come into range the first 2 weeks. But this morning it was just great weather. November 3rd, it was our first November hunt together. We went into a spot that I had scouted in April, and I just knew it was going to be a killing tree. There was an apple tree in front of us, like a lone apple tree that was producing. There were sporadic apple trees across this larger property, but in this area, this zone, there was a lone producing apple tree with a nice scrape under it and a bunch of travel routes coming and bedding above us. With the wind coming down. Like I just knew as soon as I walked on that spot in the spring that it was going to be a kill spot. And this was our first hunt out of that spot in November. We get in, the wind isn't doing exactly what we wanted it to do. So a couple of the places where we were expecting deer to be coming from, we had to kind of write off. So we were a little bit like, dejected. We're just like, man, this keeps happening to us. You get into a spot and the wind is doing the exact opposite. So it throws a wrench into your plan. But that had been happening to us the entire first 2 weeks of the season too. So we just kind of like chalked it up. It's like, oh, whatever. We're in here. It's November. Right at legal light. The first minute of legal light, I pulled out my grunt tube and I just did 5 soft grunts. It just felt right. I don't do that a lot. That morning, the wind kind of died down. I knew that there'd be deer up in the fields above us, and there's bedding, in between us and the fields. But there might be a buck getting back into his bedding up there. I wanted him to hear us. So I did 5 soft grunts because, again, it was pretty dead quiet at that point. So you don't want to be super loud grunt. It was just even a soft grunt, deer could hear it from 200 yards up the hill. So that's all I did. And 5 minutes later, I never even saw this deer coming in. 5 minutes later, I hear him first. He grunted. And we both looked at each other. It was like, that was a grunt. I looked up, and he was already at that apple tree, but he just snuck his way in there without us hearing him, and he was already at that apple tree. So I drew, and the apple tree was 25 yards away, and he was kind of at the back, on the back side of it. But I drew because I didn't know, when I was going to get a better chance to draw, and a shot might present itself at any moment. So I was at full draw and waiting, and I was at draw for a minute and a half as he slowly started walking directly at us. So I had no shot. I wasn't going to take a frontal shot. He was coming directly at us, and I'm just aimed at him, waiting for him to turn right. He took his time, made a scrape, peed in the scrape, took his sweet time making that scrape, and then he turned to the left, and I had to let down. Right before he turned, I had to let down. It could have blown it at that point. He was at 18 yards. He was only 18 yards away at that point, but he did not catch me dropping it. So he turned and he went behind another group of trees that were right there. I drew again. He stepped out on the other side at 18 yards, and I put a really good shot on him. And he died within shot of the camera. And it was just like the amount of joy. Because we had both been working hard together. I didn't like the fact that we weren't seeing a lot of deer. It seemed like the woods were being weird this year, and some of my go-to spots didn't have the amount of deer in them that I was used to. And I just want to be in the action, especially hiring a new camera guy. And it all came together, that morning, and we had just an awesome day. He took a lot of great pictures of it, and it ended up weighing 218 pounds. I couldn't believe it, which was awesome for me because I've always wanted to get a 200-pound buck, and that was my biggest rack buck as well. So just a great year.
Congrats.
Thanks, dude.
Dan, you have any thoughts?
No, I just think that vest Pat's wearing looks awful.
It looks what? Awesome or awful?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Looks like a great vest.
Yeah, well,
you say the vest, Dan? I didn't hear you. You cut out. Yeah, this vest is amazing. This is my e-bike biker gang vest that I got from you guys.
Your e-bike gang vest? Yeah.
Yep. I'm going to be riding my e-bike with this thing on.
I should have had the video of Dan on his e-bike.
Get on your
Queued up
bikes and
here.
ride.
Yeah, that is a nice vest. I'd like to get my hands on one of those someday. I don't know where I'd find one
Maybe
of those.
bring the big boy. We'll
Get
get
it?
you one.
You get it at the Dell show.
That's true. Thanks a lot for that. All right. So yeah, I mean, quite the progression that you've gone through in a short period of time. I mean, when you really think about it, what do you think really helped you the most to be able to make that progression in such a short period of time? Because for a lot of hunters out there, say guys that started maybe in the 80s or something, or even in the early 90s, like that progression takes some time. Not everybody can progress that quickly. What do you think it is? Is it the amount of knowledge? Is it the people that you've had on your show, on your podcast, people you interact with? Is there any one thing, or is it a collective of different things that help that whole process to get you to where you are now?
Yeah, first of all, I don't think I'm a great hunter, and I'm not doing anything special. The main thing is the amount of time that I'm able to put into it. I just set my life up to be able to have as much time as possible. Um, you know, the amount of time scouting, I just really think anybody could progress at that level if you have 2 or 3 years to spare where you can go at it as hard as possible. I mean, hunting almost every single day of the season, scouting, 60 days in the spring. If you can do that for a couple of years and set your life up to do that, I think anybody can have, this level of success. And success is just whatever is in your own mind. Like again, for me, I'm not trying to kill a 180 inch or a 200 inch buck. It's possible around here, but I just want to be out in the woods and have an opportunity at a mature buck every year. One or two mature bucks, doesn't matter what they look like. That's what I consider successful season for me. And it's all just goes back to the amount of time that you can scout and the amount of time that you can hunt. That's it. And then not overthinking. I think a lot of people just can get into the overthinking mindset, and it happened to me the first couple of years that I was really scouting so hard. All of this new information and data and experiences are coming into you at once, right? Like more than you're used to. Like I said, I'd never scouted while hunting in Vermont at all. I just never had. I just showed up and I sat a terrain feature. That was the extent of my hunting scouting before this. And then all of a sudden, that first year, I think I probably did more like 120 days of scouting as opposed to 60. And you have information overload. And then you're trying to figure out how do you process all of that information, because you think about one thing and then it leads you down a rabbit hole to another, and how, shoot, well, this looks like a nice spot here, but where's my access going to be? What's the wind going to be doing on a normal day like that? And early on, all of that stuff just bogs you down, and you can't make sense of it. And you can't actually put a game plan together or a strategy together. But after you do it for long enough, once you get to the point where all the information that's coming is just automatically, you know what to do with it, and you know how it's going to affect, where you're going to hunt and how you're going to get in. All of that just comes automatically. Once you get to that point, which I think the only way you can get there is dedicating a crazy amount of time to it. And I think that's the only solution to be able to get to that point where you can actually read the woods and use that data and get it in the right place. That's the only thing. It's not a secret sauce. It's if you have enough time to do that, then eventually the woods are, everything is you're gonna be able to read it so much easier. And then you still need time. And then there's plenty of guys out there who don't need a lot of time, because like I said, your life changes. 5 years from now, you might not be able to hunt as many days, or you might not be able to scout as many days in the spring. But you still have all of that historical knowledge. You did the work. You have all of that to rely on, and you're still putting yourself in a pretty damn good odds to be able to become an efficient killer and an efficient hunter. So I think that's it, man. I don't think I'm a great hunter. I was blessed to have enough time to shorten that learning curve quicker.
I think you really hit the nail on the head there. I mean, it's almost like the analogy of like data entry, right? Where you're taking in information, you're learning, you're watching videos, you're reading books, whatever it is, whatever time frame you came up hunting, but until you apply it to the real world, boots on the ground, time in the woods, that everything also comes together as a spreadsheet and now it's readable, right? The data is being processed, and now it feels real because it's in front of your face. So yeah, I feel like you've done a really good job of that in a short period of time. You know, going from a traditional hunter, which again, a lot of us went through. I think there's a lot of people watching this that are going to be able to relate to that. Like, I was part of a deer camp, and we just went through the motions, and dad did this, or grandpa did this, or uncle did that, or whatever the case was, right? Mm-hmm. And not that it was necessarily bad information, but it wasn't necessarily the right information either. And then you grow, like, you want to take those steps. I feel like some people get stuck in that, in a certain sphere of information that they've gathered, and they don't want to branch out from that. If you're wanting to grow as a hunter, you're always looking to figure it out for yourself and not just go off of the information that was force fed to you, you know, in your earlier days. And not in a harmful way in any way, shape, or form. It's just that it's a progression if you want to grow.
I think that it's going on what Pat was talking about. What I've seen over the years when I've given like the beast information, I watched all these people come into like the forums and stuff, mm-hmm. and start with DVDs and stuff. And you see a lot of people succeed and a lot of people fail. And a lot of people are like, this isn't for me, and they move on or whatever. But of the ones I've seen succeed that really succeeded highly and rather quickly were people that when they figured it out, like they figured out how the scouting worked or whatever, they became borderline obsessive with it. Mm-hmm. They seen some niche, and they had to see it over and over again, and they kept looking and growing, and the scouting became like part of the hunting and like almost more important. And those people that became obsessive about it, that enjoyed it, that it wasn't a chore they had to do to earn the buck, right. That it was like they enjoyed it, went out and did it constantly, and learned how these bucks lived and stuff, and went into their bedrooms, looked at how they live and stuff, and thought about it. And the people that have that like detective type mind are the guys that succeed. And it's over and over again when you hear guys like Pat, you can kind of see that, where what I was getting out of this without him even saying it is he moved into this new area, and he's kind of obsessing about not going to deer camp and stuff. He starts looking around, finds some properties, gets back in them, and sees something. So, like, hey, this is being missed. And his obsessive nature just goes into that, and he starts looking at all of it. And then when he goes out hunting, he gets a buck right away and learns that, hey, this is working, and just starts exaggerating on it. Is that correct, Pat?
Yeah, 100%. It's almost like I had an analogy I was thinking about the other day, you know, like a Major League Baseball player. You can, if you get drafted into the pros, then you got to go spend many years, you know, for most of these guys, sometimes their whole career down in the minors, you know. And the thing that separates the guys from the minor leagues, who are really, really good athletes, some of the best baseball players in the whole world, from the guys that make it to the pros, is it's their obsessive. The guys in the pros were more obsessed with it, to be able to work harder, and then to get to that level. And you could have, there's a lot of guys in the minors where if they just had a little bit more of a work ethic, or they had, you know, a little bit more of a clutch gene or something, you know, because a lot of guys don't have that clutch gene, or they fold under pressure, and they're under the big lights you fold. And there's just some people are made that way, and others are not. In basketball, you got the Michael Jordans and the Kobe Bryants of the world, who they dreamed of the time when their team was down and there was a few seconds left, and they demanded the ball. They would never think of passing it. They want to shoot it. They love that kind of pressure. it's just the way that your mind works. Those guys had that type of hard work mentality, plus not folding under pressure, plus they were given these great, they were given these genes and this athletic build, and you add all those things together, you get the best basketball player ever to live. In the hunting world, nobody's going to be the best hunter ever to live. It's just so hard or subjective, and you shouldn't even want to be thinking about that. But you have the opportunity, no matter what your body looks like, no matter what genes you were given, to go out there and be really good, be at that minor league level, where you're one of the best in the world simply because you outworked everybody else. You could do that because it's all about the hard work, and it really doesn't matter about what was passed into you. It's if you're willing to go out and just put all the time into it and obsess over it, then you can be really, really successful quickly.
Yeah, I agree. Really, really good analogy for sure. All right, shifting gears here a little bit. I did want to spend a little bit of time talking about what you have going on outside of the hunting world. I guess it's still in the hunting world, but not you personally hunting. You have your own podcast, Hunt Suburbia. Tell us a little bit how that started.
Yeah. Hunt Suburbia. Again, it was just to document, my life journey from being a deer camp rifle hunter to a suburban bow hunter. I knew that would be a big part of my life story, and I wanted to just get it all down so I can go back and listen to it. My kids can listen to it, and just document it, but also to be able to get that learning curve, interview some great hunters, develop relationships with these guys. I knew that it would be beneficial and valuable for me to start it. And I started out doing them, once a week. And again, as life changes, the once a week turned into once every 2 weeks, and now we do maybe 13 to 15 a year, just because I'm so busy with Huntstock and some other things that have taken some of that time that I used to focus and dedicate on the podcast away. But we still do them. It's been an amazing journey starting it. I think the first big kind of break for the podcast was when I interviewed Lanny Benoit, because I was interviewing a lot of local legends and stuff, right? Guys from Massachusetts. I really wanted to get better at the Massachusetts way of hunting, and I wasn't even thinking about interviewing trackers in Vermont or New Hampshire, Maine, or anything like that. But I got introduced to Lanny, and I, of course, knew about Lanny growing up, and his family is so legendary, and everybody read the books and watched all their DVDs, and the Benoits were it. So when I got the opportunity to do a podcast with him, I said, yeah, let's do it. It's not suburban hunting, but it does tie into my interests, and he's an absolute legend in the game. So I got introduced to him. We became fast friends. He's got a lake house right next to my dad's lake house on Lake Champlain,
Nice.
less than half a mile up the shoreline, and we would have never known it. So we ended up doing that podcast from my dad's little lake cabin up there in 2021. And when I went to start Huntstock, Lanny was the first person I thought of to ask if he wanted to come do seminars. He hadn't been doing seminars for like 10 years. He'd been kind of out of the hunting space. But when he came on my podcast, I think it ended up getting like 250 or 300,000 views. All of a sudden, all this interest started bubbling back up again. People hitting Lanny up, and he told me that it got the love of hunting back to him, where he got this energy and this inspiration to want to be back in the hunting world and stuff. Because he had been building snowmobile engines. He builds the fastest snowmobile racing engines on the planet, him and his son Landon, and they're really good snowmobilers, like world-class snowmobilers. Lanny is a legend in the snowmobiling world, almost more than he is in the hunting world. Like, he's won multiple World Series. He's an incredible human being, but that's what he was doing for the 10 years he was away from hunting, was just focusing on that. And then, he was like, yeah, I'd love to do seminars again. So our first year at Huntstock, was build is like, hey, look, Lanny hasn't here. The Benoits are back. He hasn't done seminars in 10 years. Come catch him. So that was a really cool promotion. It got a lot of people to want to come down to Huntstock that first year. And, Lanny and I have been really close every year. We hang out up at the lake, do a podcast every once in a while. I see him at a bunch of different places, and he's just a terrific human being. So, like, being able to meet guys like that through the podcast over the years has been a wonderful experience. And then, a lot of these guys end up being friends, and we keep in touch, weekly, and then they all want to come to Huntstock and be a part of that whole Huntstock experience and teach what they know and socialize with everybody as if you're all part of the same deer camp. So now that's kind of what we do on the podcast is 10 or 15 podcasts, trying to do, a little bit bigger guests rather than just interviewing all my buddies and people, from the neighborhood and close by. It's, we kind of pick and choose when we do it now just because I don't have as much time to do them.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Moving forward, let's talk about Huntstock.
Yes.
How did this premonition come, or this the whole thought behind Huntstock? Where did this all stem from?
It stemmed from the podcast, and once I like Dan was saying, I got obsessed with hunting again to a level that I'd never been obsessed with it before. It was always a 5 weekend thing out of the year. It was deer camp. It was the fun of camp. That was it. And then when I got obsessed with hunting down here, I'm doing everything that every other person who's got a new obsession does, and you're researching everything. All right, are there any shows I can go to? What's happening in the hunting industry? Like, I just wanted to soak everything up. So I started going to the local shows and stuff, and they're okay. I'm not talking down on any local shows, but I didn't feel like this. This energy or excitement at the shows. It just didn't feel that exciting.
Same old, right?
Yep. So I started thinking about that. I came from an event background. I worked for 12 years at Spartan Race and, traveled the world building Spartan Race events and specifically the festival areas and, designing the festival areas and working partnership side of that thing. That I had a ton of event experience. I had been involved with 120 events at least where I was on site, coordinating and doing a lot of that behind the scenes stuff and festival design. So I had that experience, and I had this newfound obsession with hunting, and I was like, you know what, maybe the way for me to be able to hunt more in my life, which is what I want. I'm obsessed with it at this point. I can utilize all my experience from the event world and put it into this new passion, and then work my ass off on it to make it into something that is truly unique and is a community designed and community oriented festival. And I just wanted to bring energy back into the hunting community and into the show, and have kids be inspired. And I wanted this tradition to stay alive. So I thought about it for years. I thought Huntstock into existence for it was probably two years of just thinking over and over. How can we make this show different? What are some things that we can do? And I just spent a lot of time thinking about it, and ended up in 2022 saying, let's just go. I had a terrible year in 2021. My wife's brother died. He got diagnosed stage 4 cancer. He was only 37. He died unexpectedly, really quickly. My mom died within a couple of weeks of that, and then one of our pets got hit by a car. All within a couple of weeks, and it was just like this black cloud came over our family, and we were grieving for a long time. And sometimes anybody who's experienced grief, that cloud can come and it can hang there, and it really feels like you're at the bottom and there's no way out for a long time. Sure. And then when the clouds finally part and the sun, you're starting to see some sun again, it can be a huge blessing. And it was at that point when we finally got to the end of the grief, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do something that I love. I love hunting. I've been thinking about Huntstock for way too long. Let's just do it. So I just bit the bullet, man, and took on a lot of risk. It's kind of scary moving away from your full-time job where you got all this security and then trying to do something, with all your eggs in the basket. And but it goes back to that Dan Wagner podcast where if you think about something, you think it into existence, and then you work really hard at it, it's a given that it's going to be how you envisioned it, as long as you envision it and you actually do the work for it. And that's what that first year at Huntstock, man, when it came together, it was like, wow, that came together exactly how I dreamed it up. And it's only because I thought about it so many times and for so long, and then actually went through and did all the hard work to bring it to life. It came out just amazing, and every year since then, we're just been trying to improve it. Get more people, spread the word about the show so people can experience that same energy and that same inspiration. How I felt after that event ended that first year. I mean, I was so inspired and so motivated, and it's just because I'd never been in a place where the energy level was so high. Everybody was on the same page. You go there with your hunting buddies. Hunters were very tribal, and we typically have small tribes, right? It's like your core group of hunting buddies, and you got small tribes. And think about how you feel when you're with your best friend, your very best friends in the world, right? You feel so great. You're on the same energy level. You got inside jokes. You guys are all on the same page. And then at Huntstock, it's like 500 of those core groups all coming together, and then those groups, like, their bubbles intersect and they all become one big, and just think about the energy level and what happens in a scenario like that. And that's what I think Huntstock does, and I don't know how to explain it any other way than that, but it's like all the energies come together, and it's like, whoa, this feels like a hunting paradise, a paradise for hunters, where you don't have to think about anything else. It's like you're at deer camp for a whole weekend.
I agree 100%. I mean, it was a show like no other, and having gone to and been a part of countless shows, and Dan can attest to this too for himself. It feels very deer campy, but on a larger scale, obviously. The camaraderie, just the vibe is just different at Huntstock. What do you think, Dan?
I've been doing shows since the 80s, the 1980s, longer than some of the people watching this have been alive. And I've never been at a show like Huntstock. I liked it so much that when I had Pat out here visiting me, I said, we got to do a show like this in Wisconsin. In the Midwest here, it would just rock. And I said, I know the venue. And I went there and visited it, took some pictures, sent them to him. And I think it was like that day or the next day you booked it.
Yeah. That's how I operate, man. I just want, it. I believed in it because you sold it to me too. Like, bringing it to Wisconsin, it was like, yeah, it's a no-brainer.
Great.
I knew immediately. So then I trusted you immensely with everything. And you're just like, yeah, this venue's great. Here's a couple pictures. I just went to a flea market there. I was like, all right, let's get it on the books. Because once you get it on the books, then you're committed. It's like with anything in life. If you get something, you just got to take that next step. Because then you're in. You're in, and now you just got to get to work. But so many people can just wait on taking that next step because they're afraid. But what's the worst that's going to happen, man? You fail at something and you learn from it. And that's how the first Huntstock happened in Massachusetts too. I got a call or a message from somebody who heard me talking about the idea of Huntstock on a podcast. I wanted to do something like this in the future, and Wildwood Farm reached out, and they're like, "Hey, we listened to your podcast. We love it. We've got a farm. I think this idea that you're talked about. I think we could be a great place for it. You should come check it out." And I went the very next day. We set up a time. It was the next day. I drove out to see it. Fell in love with the family. Walked the property and envisioned where things could be there, and literally saw where the stages were going to be and everything just from the first walkthrough. And said, all right, let's get this done. What do we have to do? Put it into a contract within days, just so that I have something now. We're committed to it. Now let's just get to work. And I think if the more that you can do that, the more you'll be successful in anything.
You got to jump on those opportunities and not just table it like, well, that's a great idea. I might revisit this, but the jump on those opportunities when they're right there in front of you, fresh in people's minds. I get chicken skin a little bit, like thinking about how cool that show really is. And I can't express this enough to those of you watching. You guys have to come check this show out. It's reinvented the way hunting shows and outdoor shows should be. Not to say that there's anything wrong with the traditional way, but this is just something different. And I don't know how else to describe it, but I think it's just something you have to experience. So I highly recommend people come and check it out. Whether you're on the East Coast and you're going to come to Huntstock in Massachusetts for your first time, or you're coming back for your second or third time, or you're going to come and check out this one in the Midwest. With that said, let's talk about a couple things here, because I'm going to bring up some of the graphics here. I believe everybody can still hear me on this one here. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So this is who you have booked right now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's more people every day that want to give seminars and stuff, but I think we're at the point where our seminar schedule is completely full. I actually have to go through and schedule out all the seminars so I can see if we have any slots left. But it's what a great seminar lineup. I mean, you got most of these guys are do-it-yourself hunters that have rise to the highest levels of success on killing mature bucks, and they've done it, and do it yourself, grind it out, find public land, find accessible private land that's open to other people, and do all your own scouting. For the most part, self-taught guys. So that level of information, John Eberhart, Barry Wenzel, Rick Labby, Lanny Benoit. So these three on the top right, those are the Northeastern guys that we're bringing down, that are going to be talking a lot about tracking, big wood style hunting. Dan Wagner's going to do some bear hunting stuff. But those are the three. We wanted to make sure that we bring a little bit of that Northeastern culture to the Midwest too. So that, Rick Labby, someone just said that's his personal hero. There's a lot of guys that want to see Lanny Benoit. A lot of guys out there from the UP and from Minnesota and places where you can track, even northern Wisconsin, I'm sure, that grew up reading Lanny's dad's book, and then Lanny and the boys, all his brothers, they put out a bunch of books and watching their DVDs. This might be the only time he comes out to Wisconsin. Who knows? So get out there.
Tried to.
Oh, we lost Dan there for a second. Dan. He's kind of in and out here a little bit tonight. I was just gonna say, like, just in that right hand quadrant there, that one quarter, we've had 4 of those people on our show just in this last year here: Rick Labby, Dan Wagner, Derek Dixon, Bernie Behringer, Aaron Warburton. And then Dan's on every week too.
Yep.
He left us just now for whatever reason, but he's been struggling here with some technical difficulties. But no, I mean, talk about a lineup, guys. This is a lineup. These are people that don't always show up at shows. Your chance to see Barry Wenzel, the legend, is fantastic. That was one of my highlights last year. He's
the man.
Prime rib on Thursday night. I think we got in on Thursday night out there, right, for the film festival.
Yeah.
And shooting the breeze with Barry Wenzel was just phenomenal. And then you guys get to meet a bunch of the guys from the hunting public. I mean, are you kidding me? That they don't do a lot of shows.
Yeah. And seminars are a big thing. We want to make sure that they're for people who there's so many different ways to experience Huntstock. You can go and go with the intention of seeing 10 or 12 seminars, and that's what you want to get the most out of the weekend, and we have that for you, and you can learn so much and have all these great experiences listening to these guys teach different topics. Some people like to do that. But that lineup, it's great for the knowledge that they're going to bring, and they deliver awesome seminars, world-class seminars, great audio. We make sure that people can hear. We spend a lot of money on audio and visual and stuff like that. But that lineup is more impressive just for it's more so like what happens after those guys are not giving their seminars. When they're not up on a stage, the level of access that you have to be able to talk with them in a deer camp environment, it's not, you go to some shows and you feel rushed. You feel like you're packed in there like sardines, and there's somebody right behind you that also wants to go talk to them. You have so much time at Huntstock, and the atmosphere and the vibe allows for like just amazing access where you can have long conversations with these guys. They can become your friends. They might invite you to go hunting with them next year. I mean, it's just that whole part of it, I think, is the coolest part about these lineups. And there's another 2 dozen people that are not on that list giving seminars that'll be there, that are big names, that are cool people, that are so passionate about hunting, that won't be doing seminars, but they'll be there to hang out and just kind of enjoy the entire weekend with everybody.
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, that is the thing, is that these guys are accessible the entire weekend too. You're going to be able to go to their stands, their booths, wherever they're set up, and spend some time talking with them. And I mean, everybody last year. I mean, and if they're not there, they're walking around chatting with everybody. That's the other thing too. Then you got the after hours stuff.
Yeah. Then we got live music on Friday and Saturday, and most of these guys are going to be hanging out, just going to a concert like everybody else, and having a great time. And one of the things I'm like most excited about, because I'm a huge live music fanatic, and I record music. I used to be a rapper, just like my partner Pat. We both used to be we both used to be rappers. We both recorded albums before. We've got a creative mindset. So we always wanted live music to be a part of it. And when I found out that Ted Zangerly from the Hunting Public plays music, I think I found out a few years ago. In my head, I was always thinking, all right, we got to get Ted to come to Huntstock just to perform, not even like as a hunter, but like to perform something where we don't really know him that well. We see him hunt. He's a great personality. He seems like a really nice guy, but to him, when he gets up on a stage and plays music, that's one of the things he loves the most in his life. So I was thinking that would be cool to get him to play. And he's playing on Thursday night at Huntstock, on the VIP night, the night before the show opens. So there's VIP tickets to be able to come to that VIP party.
Let's talk about that.
Ted's going to be playing.
Is this an up to date, or is this not? Okay. Okay.
Maybe you want to show them.
Okay. Yep. I'm pulling it up now. I apologize, guys. That last scene I had pulled up, all sound was off. So, Pat, do you want to reiterate what you just said? Because on that scene, there was no sound.
Yep. So Scott was just showing the different levels of tickets that we offer at Huntstock before, and the prices are the prices go up twice for us to our gate price. Typically, we've always just started online ticket sales at the gate price, in all years prior, but we wanted to offer cheaper tickets for people to get their tickets earlier and incentivize them to get their tickets earlier. So this year we discounted two different levels, and Scott was showing the pricing up until January 1st. So now we're at a different price level. So those prices on the previous slide are just off a little bit. But if you want to get your the cheapest tickets, get them before April 1st, because on April 1st, our ticket pricing is going to be going up to the same price as you can get them at the gate. So right now they're at their cheapest, and we're also doing until March 31st special 25% off discount code. We don't offer discount codes often. When we do, they're 10% off codes. So 25% off right now for anybody listening until March 31st if you use the code Beast Report. And it's max 20 uses. So, you might, maybe 20 people will get their tickets tonight, and then the code's not going to work anymore. But we wanted to just at least offer up some really heavily discounted tickets for anybody listening that hasn't got their tickets yet.
Yeah, it's a pretty good savings. I mean, if you guys think about it, 25% off. That's pretty significant. So for the first 20 people, don't leave us just yet, or maybe you should. Maybe you should just go and jump off right now and take advantage of this opportunity because it's only for the first 20 people. They're going to get 25% off their ticket package. So
yeah, so if you're going to come to the VIP night or something, that's a $225 ticket. Make sure you guys look at all the things that come. Each different ticket level offers a bunch of different perks and benefits. The higher price tickets, you're going to get a lot more door prize entries and things like that, and access to the VIP party. That VIP ticket is $225 for the weekend. It's well worth it, and with 25% off, you're saving $56 on that. So I would encourage people, if you want to get the full experience of Huntstock, get that VIP ticket. Come stay all 3 nights, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. Book a campsite there. They've got campsites on site at the fairgrounds, and look at it like a vacation, and come and spend all 3 nights and go to every event that we have going. So you can save some really good money using code Beast Report until March 31st.
Absolutely. Don't forget, use code Beast Report. Get on it right now. Outside of everything else you guys have going on, you guys also do a whole bunch of, actually, I'm doing the wrong one. This is the one I'm looking for here. Your door prize giveaways. Can you explain how that works, how your door prizes work? Oh, hang on 1 second, Pat. Hang on. I think this scene has no sound as well, so let me switch. Sure, go ahead. No, go ahead. Do it. Do it now. I will. Yep. Do it. All right, I apologize, guys. That scene also had no sound because those are usually scrolling at the start of the show here, and I forgot to add the back scenes there. Pat's going to be right back here real quick. Yeah, what we had brought up on that scene there is that there is over $40,000 worth of door prizes that are given away. They give these away on a daily basis for each show. There's no extra entry fee to get into this. Your entry fee to get into the show gets you entered into those door prizes. They're giving bows away. They're giving nugs away. They're giving all sorts of different prize packages. When when Pat gets back on here in just a second here, we'll talk about that. One of my favorite things about Huntstock when I was out there in Massachusetts with Dan this last year was the amount of people that were just so accommodating. And when I say accommodating, what I'm trying to get at is that everybody was super, super friendly. Everybody was in a good mood. Everybody was feeling the atmosphere that was Huntstock. And you get that to a certain extent in a lot of other shows, but this one was just different. And I don't know how to explain it other than that it really had a deer camp type atmosphere to it. There's so much of it that is outdoors, and when you think about a deer camp, it just had that kind of feel to it. Everybody was really excited. Everybody was really happy to be there. The music, the entire atmosphere was just second to none. Pat do a fantastic job. The volunteers that they have, the amount of work and effort they put into this. They do a film festival that was absolutely amazing. It's in a short period of time for how long that Pat have been doing this, for where they are at right now is just crazy. And for them to be coming here to the Midwest and doing this with this particular lineup that they have is just kind of unheard of. I mean, some of the shows that we have gone to over the last several years, you just don't see this number of legendary hunters, if you will. And I feel like this lineup is quite legendary. Pat, would you agree? Yeah. I understand. I understand completely.
Is
All of them.
you can drink them like fish, you know? And yeah, I can house like a 12 pack of these. I don't wake up with a hangover. I still get the same social enjoyment that I used to get when I was drinking.
Yeah.
But I have to pee a heck of a lot more.
Guys, I apologize. I'm looking at some of the comments here. Yeah, that one particular scene there where we're showing some of the door prizes and stuff that Huntstock has to offer. I didn't have the sound set up for that, so maybe you can just go ahead and reiterate some of those things that you guys are doing as far as the door prizes and how that actually works.
Yeah, the door prizes. We secure at least $40,000 worth of stuff. We want to give back, flagship stuff, like really nice things, from bows to guns to hunting trips to optics and cameras. And there's over 100 prizes that we give out at the show. And anybody who buys a ticket to Huntstock, you get door prize tickets on the way in, and the different levels, package levels, you might get more entries and have better odds, but everybody gets a ticket and has a chance. You have to be there to win. We do it at the end of the show, right before we go into the live music and the after party. We kind of culminate the day with a big door prize drawing, and the energy level there is pretty insane because you've got the biggest crowd all in one place. Everybody's excited, wanting to win something, and it's just a really great experience. So, yeah, I don't know exactly what, the exact door prize list won't be published until like a month before the show probably. But that slide that you put up is a pretty good representation of the types of prizes that we will be giving out at Huntstock. I see a question over there. Can you bring kids? 100%. It's a kid-friendly show. Kids have a blast. There's stuff for kids to do outside of hunting stuff too, but there's kids can sit in on the seminars. They can have great conversations. We got bouncy houses and things like that. We've got s'more making stations, and eventually we're going to do some seminars that are geared towards kids too. Like think of like a Blippy, somebody who can speak to real young kids. And, I want to do that eventually. I just haven't figured out how we're going to do that. But eventually we will have like a kids seminar stage where somebody's kind of dumbing it down for those younger kids and just talking to them about hunting at a really, really low level that would be engaging. Like we're thinking about how to do that. So if anybody has any ideas on that, reach out to me, because I'm all about making anything happen. If somebody's like, that sounds like I would like to do that, like, let's do it. Like I'm happy to just like let somebody take that and run with it. If anybody has any ideas for Huntstock, just in general, we're of the mindset of, if you can dream it up yourself and you can activate it and do it, you can create something, your own special little something at Huntstock that adds value to people and that you would enjoy doing. Like, we're all about making that happen. So anybody has any ideas, no ideas are too big, or no ideas can't, we can make anything happen as long as we work at it. So I'm always open. You can email me at huntsuburbia@gmail.com or find me on socials or anything like that. And happy to talk with anybody about anything.
Awesome. Well, Pat, I'm sorry we lost Dan. I don't know what happened, but
that's all right.
Weather's been wonky here in Wisconsin the last couple of days. We've had ice storms and tons of snow and things, so who knows what's going on. It could be something in his area that he lost his internet connection. He was a little off anyways tonight. Not Dan personally, but his connection with us was a little off. He had actually switched to his phone, so it might be an internet problem on his end. But I want to thank you, and on behalf of Dan and myself, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next weekend at the Open Season Sportsman's Expo in Wisconsin. So
absolutely.
Kind of representing Huntstock, right?
Yep, 100%. Can't wait for it. Guys, thank you very much for having me. It was a lot of fun. And again, I think sometimes it's hard to like step back, but I think what you guys are doing is something big and very beneficial and amazing for the hunting community. Doing a live show like this, having it be interactive where people can comment in and you read their questions live, like, it just shows that you're going a little bit extra effort that most other podcasts or shows are not doing, and like that doesn't go unnoticed. So thank you guys for everything that you're doing and helping to keep this tradition alive and keep the energy around it. It's not easy to do a live show every single week, so thank you guys for doing that.
It is, and it's a little nerve-wracking at times because there's so much that you're having to deal with. Between questions, answers, internet connections, and just the algorithm. What's allowed and what's not. It's a constant challenge, but we're happy to do it from week in and week out. So, Pat, if you'll stick around here just for a little bit while
Absolutely.
I close things out.
Yep.
Again, appreciate you joining the show tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, so that's going to wrap up tonight's show. Again, I apologize on behalf of Dan and myself for his connection and sound issues this week. But hopefully you guys got something out of the show, and we'll be back again next week. Don't forget, we're going to be at Open Season at the Kalahari Resort in Wisconsin Dells next weekend. Hope to see many of you from the Wisconsin and Midwest area out there. You get to see Pat Burns, Pat Guyette, Dan and myself, Uncle Lou from Stealth Outdoors. We're going to have a good time out there, and it's kind of like the precursor for Huntstock 2026 here in the Midwest. So until next time, guys, be safe, be good, and we'll see you next week.